Members of the Council Rock School District's Board of School Directors. I'll introduce my colleagues here tonight. Try to do it in seniority order. Andy Block and Denise Brooks, Mike Thorwart, Marianne McKee, Kristen Marcel, and Joe Hidalgo, and Ed Salomon. Due to business obligations, Mark Bialik could not be here tonight. Last fall, the board formed a security subcommittee, which I chair, and began a review of the district's security program. That was because we were hearing concerns and could see there was some anxiety, understandably, among students and parents following the tragic shootings in Florida and elsewhere. We wanted to address those concerns, and we also wanted to determine if we were doing everything that we could reasonably do to continue to ensure the safety of our students and teachers and staff. I expected to find that the district was doing a good job with the security programs because everything that we do here at Council Rock, we tend to do very well. And what we found, I think, over a series of meetings is that our security program is very thorough, it's progressive, and it's even innovative in some aspects. And you're going to learn about that tonight. You're also going to have some opportunities to share your comments and questions and suggestions. Some of those ought to be done more privately than a public forum, but we'll give you avenues to do that. We learned that we have a very solid security program in terms of the physical facilities, in terms of a very strong security staff, and we have some thorough, extensive, and excellent student support programs that are so essential to prevention. As you know, here in Council Rock, we have truly excellent teachers and administrators and staff, and they're led by our superintendent, Dr. Robert Fraser, and he's going to run the meeting tonight. So thank you for coming.
And in case you weren't exactly sure who that was, Mr. Edward Tate. Thank you. Thank you to Mr. Tate, and thank you to the entirety of our Council Rock School Board. I would say first for leading effectively within the realm of school safety and school security, and also for being tremendously supportive of any and truly every request that we have made to enhance the safety of our schools, for our students, and for our team of staff members. There is unequivocally no more important topic about which we could meet and discuss. And unequivocally, there is no higher priority in the Council Rock School District than school safety and school security. So thank you for being here. I was hoping that we would have a couple more people here, but greatly, genuinely appreciate those of you that are here. We also recognize that it's a very busy time of year, and knowing that and anticipating that, we are also live streaming this on YouTube. So for those of you watching at home, hello. And we will have a way for you to, for everyone, whether you're here in person or watching at home, to send us your thoughts and your feedback. And I'll get to that in a couple of moments. This evening's agenda is on the screen. We are extremely, extremely grateful this evening to have our Bucks County District Attorney, Mr. Matthew Weintraub, here. As you can see, Mr. Weintraub will kick off our efforts by talking about initiatives, efforts, action planning on a countywide level. I will tell you that this past summer, I attended a workshop at the Bucks County Intermediate Unit where all Bucks County school superintendents were there, all Bucks County police chiefs were there. Mr. Weintraub was front and center, instrumental in that meeting, and I walked away truly impressed. So I'm looking forward to hearing him this evening, and I trust that you are as well. Following Mr. Weintraub, our agenda this evening will then move into a discussion of some of our Council Rock specific efforts. So these presentations will range from Mr. Doug Taylor behind me here, providing a high-level overview of our safety and security plan, to Dr. Chuck Lambert, sitting behind me, discussing our efforts, importantly and necessarily from a mental health standpoint. We cannot lose sight of that piece of safety and security planning. To Mr. Bill Rick, along with Northampton Township Lieutenant Chuck Pinkerton and Newtown Township Lieutenant Jason Harris, describing how the partnerships that we have with our local police departments and they with us are absolutely vital to the safety and security of our schools, and I would say even beyond our schools with the way our partnerships work. Now, there are two caveats that I want to put out there about some of that information we'll be sharing this evening. And this first one, I think, is fairly obvious, but I don't want there to be any confusion, so I'll state it. And that is that there are certain specific aspects of our safety and security planning in the school district that we don't, and tonight will not, discuss publicly. And why is that? Simply because we don't want this information to get into the hands of the wrong people, people with bad intentions who could then use that information against us and against our students. So we will be very intentional and very deliberate with what we share, although I will assure you that we will share every bit as much information as we feel we safely can. So again, we're glad that you're here, and we want this to be an informative evening for you. The second point of emphasis here is that our safety and security plan as a school district and the process of safety and security planning is ever evolving. It's never going to be finished, and if there is one singular document that exists in the school district that must constantly live and breathe and therefore must constantly evolve, it is our safety and security plan. So what is a truth today with our plan that you'll hear about? Certainly you can expect that to continue to evolve as we learn more, as we grow, as we refine practices, as new technologies become available, and so on and so forth. Then from an agenda standpoint, we are going to get to probably the biggest chunk of our evening, and we are very fortunate to have Mr. Brandon Roan with us this evening. Brandon is a national certified Ellis trainer who has actually been here at Council Rock previously. He spent 2 full days actually in this school, largely in this auditorium, training a large group of our administrators, teachers, and even many of our local police officers, because this Ellis approach really coordinates all of those groups together. So as you'll hear this evening, and you may have heard previously because we've done some communicating, we have indeed already begun to implement Alice in the school district. What we have not done, however, is in any formal or really even in any informal way, introduce Alice to our students. So for all the parents out there, the reason why is because we feel it's important and appropriate to first inform you, educate you on what Alice is, how it works, what it's all about, and then move on to starting to have those discussions and teachings with our students. So after Mr. Roan is finished presenting this evening, he will take your questions. That's why these 2 microphones are set up. What we're going to ask is that your questions this evening are limited to Alice only. And the reason being is that, again, we don't want any questions asked that would provide information that would get into the wrong hands, or any combinations of a question and answer that would get into the wrong hands. Now, having said that, we recognize that you probably have inquiries and thoughts that you want to share with us, or that you want to get a response from us. So we have created a designated email address. So you see it up there, safety@crsd.org. We ask that you please send your inquiries to that email address. You can do that tonight. You can do that any day moving forward. And know that on the receiving end of those emails will be myself, will be Mr. Doug Taylor, will be Ms. Susan O'Grady, who is in the audience over here. She is our community relations specialist that you hear from all the time in your inbox. And also the entirety of our board of school directors will also receive any of those email submissions. So I'm I'm going to keep this up here for you so you can take a picture of it or take note of it some other way. And as I keep that up there, I do want to also introduce many of our first responders from our community who are part of our team, vital partners in keeping our schools safe today, tomorrow, and every day thereafter. So I'll ask that these folks who somewhat are congregated up here in the front, somewhat spread out, as I announce your name, and we'll do it department by department, just if you could just give a quick stand up and a quick wave so folks can see who you are and recognize your important presence here, that would be fantastic. So starting off from the Northampton Township Police Department, we have Officer Zach Wyant, and we have Council Rock South School Resource Officer Jim Caldwell. Thank you, gentlemen. From the Northampton Township Fire Department, we have Fire Marshal Frank Fenton, and we have Deputy Fire Chief Rob Holmes. From the Newtown Borough Police Department, we have Corporal James Warnick. From the Newtown Fire Department, we have Chief Glenn Forsythe. From the Newtown Township Police Department, we have our new chief. Welcome to Newtown. Welcome to Council Rock, John Hearn, Chief John Hearn. We also have Lieutenant Bob Matthews. And we also have Council Rock High School North School Resource Officer Renee Hurst. From the Upper Makefield Police Department, we have Officer Jerry Rusi. Going on, because we have a lot of partners, and this is a good thing. From the Upper Makefield Fire Department, we have Fire Marshal John Kernan. And from the Wrightstown Fire Department, we have Fire Marshal Ted Middleman. To all of these ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely cannot thank you enough for protecting and serving not only our 14+ schools in the Council Rock School District, but the entirety of our school district. 72 square miles, thousands of homes, a lot of roadways. You are invaluable to us as a school district, and you are invaluable to this entire community. Let's collectively give them one more round of applause. All right. Thanks again for being here. You have the pleasure of not hearing from me again until the end. But at this point, it is my sincere pleasure to introduce our Bucks County District Attorney, Mr. Matthew Weintraub.
All right, I'm on the clock. I got 15 minutes. I'm going to talk fast here. I'm very grateful to be here for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is I grew up down the road in Southampton. I'm a William Tennant boy, and we always had Council Rock envy. So thank you for welcoming me here. But I have a lot to cover, and I'm grateful that we're on YouTube because I have 2 teenage daughters, and I guess this means I have a half a shot at seeming cool to them. I don't know if that's going to work out. But Dr. Frazier reminded me when we were preparing for this about that summer meeting, and it was incredible because we were able to get all the superintendents and all the chiefs of police for the entire county in one room. That was a lot of leadership and a lot of brain power. And the whole goal there was just to foster communication, because there is a lot of right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing when we talk about our law enforcement and our school community. And really, we need those two to interact completely. And as a result, Dr. Frazier told me that there really is a monthly collaboration between the school district and the 4 police departments, Newtown Township, Newtown Borough, Northampton, and Upper Makefield. I'm so grateful for that. And I have to say that at that meeting, I actually encouraged them to communicate, even if they were nervous, that they may be coming close to the line with respect to legalities, with respect to rights to privacy. Because there are certain laws that govern, whether it's HIPAA or FERPA or THISPA or THATPA. There's all those kind of laws that protect our privacy, but I would hate for us to ever be in a situation where we have a terrible case of school violence and the community is in mourning, but the administrators or the police can say, well, at least we honored the privacy laws. That is not a situation that I ever want to be in. So one of the things, and I'm a big believer in copying off of somebody else's paper, especially if they're smarter than I am, and that happens a lot. And in West Virginia, they came up with a program that's called Handle with Care. And Handle with Care essentially gives a tacit permission for these agencies, law enforcement, medical, school districts, to communicate with each other about a child that may have some issues that they can't overtly legally speak about. So what we've encouraged them to do, and we did this at that meeting, is to say the police maybe gets a call about somebody doing something marginally criminal, but it's certainly it is disturbing. We encourage that police agency to then contact the school district and say, hey, you know, little Billy so-and-so, please handle him with care. And that's no violation of the law, and that just puts that kid on the radar, because there are so many resources and ways that we can help that child. And I know we have the threat assessment team. That's what I was speaking about with Dr. Frazier, and they meet regularly to do this very thing, which I think is fantastic. And this dialogue grew out of that meeting. I have to just let you know that I'm sure a lot of people are interested in getting a hold of us and knowing what types of programs we have. And I'm not a real techie. That's it. That's my whole program right there. But if you want to get in touch with us, you can go to bucksda.org. That's our Crime Watch site. We're very interactive there. We're very responsive there, and we will get back to you. A lot of times I'll get back to you myself if you have questions, and you can leave anonymous tips there if you like, or you can reach out to us and contact us about really any kind of issues that you may come across. And if we can't answer it, we can act as a repository and distribute that information. I see one of my people out there, Debbie Moskowitz. I'm looking at you. You're the head of, like I said, it's called Crunchy. Is that right? I never knew that. But Debbie is in charge of a great organization that is here to support people throughout your school community. I'm very proud to say that we've been incredibly proactive in making sure that our children don't fall prey to the dangers of drugs and alcohol and vaping. Yes, I'm talking to you. And I would encourage you, parents, it's okay to be nosy when you're looking through your kids' social media, when you're looking through your kid's room. That's not called being nosy. That's not an invasion of privacy. That's called being a parent. And I will tell you personally that it is exceptionally gratifying to smash your teenager's vape with a hammer. You should try it. We do a great job here in making sure that all of the school districts, and I understand I just checked, that have Narcan, which is a life-saving drug. If you need it, if you know somebody that's suffering from addiction from opioids, you can get it for free down at Bucks County Drug and Alcohol Commission. Debbie can hook you up, I'm sure, with that information. They're down in Warminster for free. If somebody is suffering from opioid addiction, which are the pain pills, heroin, fentanyl, they're terrible. It's a scourge right now. But if you know somebody that's close to you, you need to have this lifesaver in your pocket. And if you use it and they're not high on opioids, they're not overdosing on opioids, it has no negative effect, but you could save somebody's life. We have Act 53, which is, heaven forbid, one of your children is suffering from substance use disorder. If they are under the age of 18, you can actually have them involuntarily against their will assessed, and then they will have to respond to whatever type of treatment or care is accorded by that assessment. And that is done through Bucks County Drug and Alcohol Commission. They'll walk you through that program, or through that process rather, and that can all occur within a week. So that's another thing that I encourage you to look at. But Communication starts at home, really. I think that a lot of times people come, and I'm preaching to the choir because you all are here, but maybe some other people are watching on YouTube, I hope. But communication starts at home. Every time I do one of these presentations, I go back home and I say, guess what, girls? My girls, I did another presentation. They're like, yes, Dad, yes, Dad. But it gives me an excuse to bring these issues again to the forefront. And that's really the key. So that's another challenge that I have for you. Please go home and talk to your kids and tell them that you came here and you attended and maybe got some useful information. We've seen a proliferation, unfortunately, in hate crimes. And there is a fine line between free speech and a hate crime. But let us be the judge. You got all your police here. You got your school resource officers. There's a lot of what we call cyberbullying, which is insidious, frankly, because it never ends. It's 24 hours a day. There's a lot of pile-on, and there's a lot of anonymity, which makes it all the more terrible. But please check with the local police, or if it occurs in school. If it occurs in school, let somebody at school know that. But that's why we have our school resource officers at the high school. And just a shout out, the Peace Center is a great resource. If there's something that doesn't rise to the level of a crime, and maybe it didn't occur at school, but there's an issue between two people that could be squashed, contact the Peace Center. And I have a phone number. It's 215-750-0323, 215-750-0323. And while I'm at it, let me just give you Bucks County Drug and Alcohol Commission's phone number. I know this is on YouTube here. 215-773-9313, 215-773-9313. If you believe that you or your son or daughter has been the victim of a crime, let us be the judge of it. Please do not respond. And now I'm talking about bullying. I'm talking about threats. I can't tell you how many times we have had to arrest the person that was being bullied because they retaliate with a threat. That's the last thing that we want to do. But if somebody makes a threat that they're going to come into school and they're going to shoot so-and-so or they're going to blow up the school, we have to respond. But that reminds me of two other points, and these are very important. Don't you respond. You take pictures, take screenshots if it's occurring over social media, then report it to the police. Please, please, if you're getting your information from social media, don't rely on it. Contact the school. I checked with Council Rock School District. I know that you have a system-wide contact provision. I think it's via text, correct? You will get a text from the school if there is something critical that you need to know about. It actually hinders law enforcement when you all start creating this social media furor, this maelstrom of perhaps inaccurate information. The last thing that we need, if there's a legitimate concern for safety, is for parents to rush into the zone of danger. I don't mean to be stepping on Brandon's information, but I'm sure he's going to echo that. Please get your information from a legitimate source and don't proliferate those rumors. So social media and the internet, I just have some quick informational points about this. Our kids are on social media. They're born with social media now. Just remind them not to have any contact with strangers. These strangers are experts. It's like they cast 500 fishing lines into the water, and you only have to catch one fish to feed. Don't let that fish be your child. And I don't mean to be an alarmist, but there are ways to protect them. There's a restricted mode even for YouTube. There's a site, a family-friendly site called watchkin.com, 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 and it's a screener. It's great. Tell your kids nobody has a right to make them do anything they don't want to do. Make sure that your kids know that they cannot share personal information. And I have to say, we're all guilty of it. We all put up our social media photographs of us having a great time in Disney World. Guess what we're telling the whole world? The front door's open, come on in, nobody's home, take what you like. My advice to you, very simple and concrete, wait until after you get home from Disney to post those wonderful pictures. We'll wait. We want to see them, but we'll wait until you get back. Set up video game restrictions to friends only. I know I'm throwing a lot at you all, but we are parents. We are not our children's friends. It is okay to be nosy. It's called love. And I think that privacy settings for all social media and gaming applications are equally as important. And finally, and this comes under the communication aspect of things, we have to continue to talk with our kids, make sure that they know that they can come to us if they feel that they may be being preyed upon or being bullied, or even if they're not sure. Let us be the judge as parents. I'm in this boat with you, and believe me, those seas can be stormy sometimes, but our goal is to make sure that our kids get on to adulthood safely. I just want to remind you again about that website. It's that you can contact us on. It's bucksda.org. It's our crime watch website, bucksda.org. And that has a lot of information about what's going on, positive, as well as some of the crime stuff that's going on. And the whole goal, frankly, is to make sure that our kids live happy and safe lives until they can reach adulthood. And hopefully you've gotten a couple of quick tips here that I was able to share with you. I think I have an interest in watching Brandon's presentation too. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go have a seat down there and watch it. But thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Is that okay if I go down?
That is okay. Thank you.
Thank you again, DA Weintraub, for taking your time out of your schedule tonight. So I'm Doug Taylor. I'm going to touch a little bit on the safety and security plan. I'm going to start with an overview of our team. As Dr. Fraser mentioned earlier, we do have a school resource officer at each of the high schools. They are providing us a tremendous opportunity to oversee the students at those schools, and they are in close proximity to the middle schools, which is also a benefit of having them here. Our security team is a team of 9 highly qualified security folks. They have a combined experience together of over 200 years with the police force. So between those 9 guys, they have a tremendous amount of time with the police, and they're providing that experience here in our district. They're managing 2 high schools, as you know, 2 middle schools, and 10 elementary schools, along with some select ancillary buildings, board meetings and things like that. So they're extremely beneficial, and you can see them throughout the district each and every day and night. They are observing over 550 security cameras throughout the district. I think about 5-6 years ago, we may have had 50. And after the events that have happened throughout the country, that has increased by over 500 throughout our district. So we have added a lot of technology to our district. In addition, security equipment, software, such as the Raptor system, which screens the visitors' backgrounds as they come to each and every school before you can move through the schools. Key fobs, scheduling the times that doors are opening and closed throughout the district each and every day. Managing the silent alarms that we have in each of the schools that contact the emergency response teams by a quick, simple touch of a button, and within seconds that team is responding. And managing other programs. Recently, the Safe to Say Something program, and soon the ALICE program. In addition, they manage many drills throughout the district, including fire drills and the emergency drills that we run throughout the schools. Those drills will soon include the ALICE training, which you'll hear about shortly, which is going to be a tremendous benefit to the district. You may have heard of the Act 44 of 2018, which was signed into law by Governor Wolf in June. I just wanted to touch base on that briefly in case you had any questions about it. It did drive many changes in school districts throughout the country, throughout Pennsylvania rather. I'm proud to say though that Council Rock was ahead of most of those mandates that did come out as a part of Act 44. We had little impact to us. We were able to manage the documentation that was required by the state. There's multiple provisions for school safety. It did require the mandate of a school safety and security coordinator, which was really an easy answer for us. Mr. Bill Rick was with our district since 1993. Bill was a police officer for over 21 years. Before becoming a member of the Council Rock team, he started as a hall monitor, moved to a security guard, and then shortly after, a security manager. In 2019, Bill was appointed the Council Rock Safety and Security Coordinator, as I mentioned. So if you do the math, that's 21 years experience with the police, 26 years of experience with Council Rock, so 47 years of experience. Certainly makes Bill a strong leader here for our security team, and we're fortunate to have him. You will hear from him shortly. We have been involved in pursuing grants to help offset some of the cost of technology and security. We've been successful in receiving money towards the Alice training, intrusion hardware grant of $25,000 to help offset some of the cost of door hardware, and mental health initiatives grant, which is in progress. We haven't heard if we are going to receive any monies on this, but we're certainly hoping to see some money. Ongoing security projects, we continue, as Dr. Fraser said, to monitor what we do in the district every day, and technology changes a blink of the eye. So we're constantly looking at options. We have security camera upgrades, which includes annual maintenance, adding cameras at areas that we find that we may need a camera that may not exist, and just an ongoing review of technology. We have a lot of partners that we can meet with and learn what's out there and how to better our schools each and every day. So that happens regularly. We are implementing secure entry intercom systems in our schools. So this summer, one of our projects will be the addition of a video, phone, and button in each lobby. So when you'll come into the lobby space, you will no longer be able to simply enter into the office space. You'll be in a warm and dry entry vestibule, and then you will buzz into the front desk, talk to the receptionist, and then they will release you into the office space, which is another layer of security that we don't currently have. In addition, the two high schools will receive an additional interior set of doors, creating a secure entry at the high school so that the person receiving you at each of those schools is behind a secure door as well. So all the schools will have parity relative to security at the entrance vestibules. The intrusion hardware is something that we're also upgrading. There were schools that have been renovated or newly constructed, such as this, that do have the thumb turn security hardware on every door, allowing a teacher or even a student to turn that in the event of an emergency in a school. But there are schools that haven't been touched to this point that have been using magnets or some other method to keep those doors secured. This summer, we're going to address the remaining schools with thumb turns or push buttons until such time those buildings are fully renovated with the newest hardware available. So that is another project for the summer to make our schools safer. The Safe to Say Something program, again, part of Act 44, is very active, working in the district. It is an anonymous reporting program. We trained our students in January. They're fully aware of it, and they are using it. I'm happy to say it provides anonymous student reporting via cell phone, via laptop, or a landline. Provides all the events are reported to a designated team of folks here at Council Rock and responded to as necessary. Obviously, any elevated reports involving potential life safety are reported to us 24/7, regardless what time of the day it is. And again, there is a team of people. I assure you, one of us is receiving those and reacting to those as they come. As a team, we communicate and we initiate whatever actions are required after those messages come through. And ultimately, we are required to close out each one of those issues. So there is a process to demonstrate that we are following up and closing out each and every item that is reported to us. So the Safe to Say Something program is very key. Before we had the Safe to Say Something program, as I said, we were ahead of the mandates. We did have a hotline service here that we used. It's right now paralleling this in the district until we transition fully to the Safe to Say Something program. But 1 million students report being harassed, threatened, or subject to other forms of cyberbullying. 80% of those students 80% of school shooters told someone of their violent plans, and 59% told more than one person. 70% of people who complete suicide told someone of their plans and gave other warning signs. So this is now an opportunity for a friend, a relative, anyone to make a call and anonymously and let us know that there are concerns out there that we can respond to. And whatever they are, I assure you we do. We've certainly seen reporting, and I think we've been instrumental in helping people already with this program. This is the site. Again, if you go to Safe to Say Something, you can find all this information. If you want more information on it, feel free through the email site to ask those questions, and we'll help you out with whatever answers you're looking for. The ALICE training is something you're going to hear more about shortly. As Dr. Fraser said, there were 50 staff members and select police officers from the contributing municipalities here trained. Mr. Brandon Rohn trained us. It was a fantastic 2 days. It went very fast. And again, if there's any skepticism of this process, when Brandon's finished speaking with you, you'll have no doubt it's the absolute right thing to do. And he'll be in front of you soon. So our team of trainers met with the staff, and over the last several months have trained the majority of our staff with a couple more training sessions for those that couldn't make the larger sessions. So we are nearly 100% trained in the district for ALICE, and we plan to implement the ALICE training through teachings with students in April, but only after parents were offered the opportunity tonight to hear more about ALICE. The approach will be more of a teaching approach than it will physical exercises. So, you know, if there's concern relative to how it looks, it's going to be more of a, initially as we implement this, teachers talking about what the options are and things that we can do. We're not going to be physically doing anything to teach the kids at this time. There will be notifications shared with parents as the events unfold in April. So you'll hear more about this before or after the training is actually starting. And later you will hear from Mr. Brandon Rohn, and he'll give you a much deeper presentation on how it looks. So before we do, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Chuck Lambert, Director of Special Services. Thank you.
Good evening. I've been asked tonight to share a sampling of our efforts in the schools in terms of mental health and particularly the interaction with school safety. Tonight I will focus on our counseling, social work, and CARES programs. In terms of counseling, we have 29 counselors across the district, 15 between the 2 high schools, 6 between the 2 middle schools, 7 amongst our 10 elementary schools, and 1 counselor who serves our students at the Sloan and Twilight programs. A couple of the highlights of things that occur through counseling at the elementary level, our counselors are involved in what we call guidance lessons. They go into the classrooms and do lessons with the youngsters on a variety of topics. Some of those topics include conflict resolution, anger management, empathy, identifying and talking about emotions, internet safety, understanding brain functioning and emotions, self-advocacy, recognizing and responding to bullying, emotional regulation. Our counselors are also involved at the elementary level with our PBIS programs. PBIS is Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. It's an evidence-based, cost-effective systems approach for establishing the social culture needed for schools to be effective and safe learning environments for all students. 8 of our elementary schools have already been trained or are in the process of being training, and the remaining 2 will be trained next year. Counselors are involved with clubs that support wellness and mindfulness, particularly at the high school and middle school levels. They coordinate presentations for our high school students by a variety of organizations on mindfulness and how it can affect mental health. We have group counseling at all levels on different issues. Examples of those could be providing groups for students who are isolated to help them build relationships, groups to foster coping strategies for anxiety, children of alcoholics, bereavement, and other family issues. Our counselors are involved in regular and ongoing consultation with teachers to identify at-risk students, those students who are evidencing behavior or academic changes. Very importantly, this information is shared during case conferencing regarding students who are transitioning between levels so that receiving schools are prepared to support these students through the transition, which can be difficult for some of them. In terms of our social work program, we have 2 social workers who work across the district in all of our schools. 1 social worker who is program specific, working with our students with IEPs for emotional support. In addition to the truancy and attendance matters that they handle, our social workers are key members of our student services teams. They are leaders in the training and implementation of our QPR process. This is a national suicide prevention training program for students who are struggling with harming themselves or harming others. QPR stands for question, persuade, and refer. It's a specific protocol that our student services staff has been trained on and uses when a situation develops. End results will often be a referral to county-level crisis services for further risk assessment. All of our staff has been trained in recognizing the signs of suicide, offering a sense of hope to these youngsters and developing an immediate safety plan for them, and supporting them and their families in getting help, whether that be immediate crisis intervention or longer-term support in accessing treatment as time goes by. On average, we do about 200 to 250 QPR processes over the course of a school year. Mr. Taylor already mentioned the Safe to Save program. Since its inception, we've had 74 contacts. About 9 of them were considered spam that don't really reach our level. Of the remaining 65, a couple of them have indeed resulted in immediate intensive intervention for students. The remainder were legitimate concerns that could be addressed through our building level interventions. Many of these were for issues that would typically have come to our attention. However, some indeed were not. This is another great avenue for students to seek help for themselves and others. Children and Youth Services, we make approximately 90 contacts with children and youth over the course of the year. I mention that only because these often result in mental health services being provided to a family in need. A big hunk of our social workers' time is getting children and families involved with community-based resources because we recognize the importance of our children being healthy, both physically and mentally, in order to learn most effectively. And finally, our CARES program. We have 4 CARES coordinators, 1 in each of the middle schools and high schools. The same functions of the CARES teams occurs in the elementary schools through their core teams, which are typically made up of the building principal, the IST teacher, a counselor, and the school nurse. CARES stands for Children at Risk in the Educational Setting and serves as our state-mandated student assistance program. Students and staff, actually anyone, can make a referral if they have concerns about a student. On average, we have about 100 to 150 referrals per year in each of the high schools. Based on these referrals, discussions occur at weekly CARES team meetings. Once referred, the participation of the student is confidential and voluntary. CARES team members have been trained on a systematic protocol for data collection and review. A consultant from the Council of Southeast Pennsylvania sits on all 4 teams. The Council is a community-based agency which serves to provide resources and opportunities to reduce the impact of addiction, trauma, and other related health issues. The team will develop and implement interventions. These might consist of counseling groups run by the CARES coordinator, outside agencies such as NOVA or the Council of Southeastern Pennsylvania. These interventions may include individual counseling or in-house mentors so the children have a go-to person and a face that they know that they can approach when they have a need. Formal drug and alcohol and mental health assessments might be conducted by the council as a result of these interventions. We do approximately 30 such assessments over the course of a school year. Finally, we also work in conjunction with the Council Rock Coalition for Healthy Youth, an outstanding community-based organization that does great things to promote healthy living amongst our youngsters. As part of that work, we carefully review the data from the biennial PAYS survey, which is the Pennsylvania Youth Survey, to identify trends and risk behaviors related to drug and alcohol use and mental health issues for our students. We've had a couple public forums presenting that information so far this year, so I won't go over that in any detail. However, standing out in the 2017 results is the significant increase in vaping, which is being seen around the country, also being prevalent among our youth here in Council Rock. And at this time, I will introduce Mr. Bill Rick, our Safety and Security Coordinator.
Thank you, Chuck. Good evening, everyone. Doug Taylor hit about everything I can think of on the security level. There's a few things I would like to mention, though. Our emergency response plans, we started probably 20 years ago. One of the first things we did, we brought in the police and fire departments. They have helped us every way we asked, every time we asked, everything we did. They were right there to help us. I can't say enough about the police and fire departments that serve our community and our schools. The police have access to our cameras, not only at their district headquarters, but also in their vehicles. They have the computers in their cars now. When they pull up, if something happens, they can pull it right up on their screen and see what they're walking into. That's one thing. The other one is the key fobs. They all have key fobs or keys to get into our schools 24 hours a day, 24/7. We're constantly upgrading our plans, and the police and fire departments are right there with us. I would like to stand here and say, yeah, I did it. I didn't do it. I didn't do it by myself, that's for sure. We look for guidance on a daily basis from the police and fire departments, and we get it. I just wanted to point that out. So again, thank you to the police and fire departments that serve our community. Thank you. Doug, you're going to come up and... From Northampton Township, we have Lieutenant Chuck Pinkerton. Chuck.
Good evening. Thank you, Bill. Good evening, Council Rock administrators, Council Rock School Board, and the whole entire Council Rock community. Chief Clark and Lieutenant LeComp are in Penn State and unable to be with you this evening. But they wanted me to ensure you that the safety and security of the children and staff members of the school is paramount in our organization. When I started in the police department 29 years ago, our presence in the school was minimal. We had an adopt-a-cop program where we would go into the schools once in a while, and we would do a little bit of Halloween safety, maybe some bike safety, some other talks. I was assigned to Holland Elementary School. Lieutenant LeComp worked with Principal Sanko down at Hillcrest Elementary. Chief Clark was at Rolling Hills, and Officer Caldwell was at St. Bede's. Over the last 29 years, our role in the schools has changed. Now we have a full-time SRO, Officer Caldwell, assigned to Council Rock South. Our officers are doing daily checks in the middle schools and the elementary schools. And we have a very big presence in our schools regarding school safety and school security. When Bill said that our relationship with school security is important, I can tell you over the last at least 15 years when I was a detective and a detective supervisor, Bill and I would be on the phone at different times during the night talking about potential incidents that could affect the schools, school safety, and we would communicate back and forth about those incidents and how to solve them. I know Chief Clark is proud of the relationship he has with Newtown Township Police Department, Newtown Borough Police Department, and Upper Makefield Police Department, and our sharing of information between those agencies. And what Bill Rick said about the relationship between the fire, the EMS, that is the goal, because the crisis might involve a fire or other emergency at the schools, and all the EMS is going to work together to help solve that problem. Chief Clark is very supportive of the ALICE program, and we're going to hear more about the ALICE program tonight. ALICE is the training that we're prepared to implement in case of crisis, and yet hope we never have to use. Thank you.
Lieutenant Jason Harris from Newtown Township Police Department.
Thank you. I stand before you tonight on behalf of Newtown Township Police Department, Chief Hearn, and all the emergency services that surround you. I'm not going to reiterate all the great information that's been passed on. I just can't compete with that. But I'll stand for you as a parent, 2 kids that go to the Council Rock School District. I can't be more proud of what Bill Rick did and the entire team behind us. We meet on a monthly basis to address issues. It's ever evolving. And as I said, I stand before you proud, and I know my kids are safe going here. So thank you.
Okay, so I'd just like to say to that same appreciation for the police and fire from the inception of a project as I manage renovations or new construction. The firemen and the police are here to take a look at those plans and assist us in making sure, that we're providing a design that is in accordance with the concerns that they share. So I appreciate the teaming that we share together on our projects. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Brandon Roan tonight. He was in law enforcement for 17 years, spent 10 years in patrol before being promoted to the rank of captain before his retirement, was a certified school or is a certified school resource officer through the National Association of School Resource Officers. And you can tell when he speaks about schools, he understands the sensitivity surrounding schools, really respected the fact that he was so sensitive to how we operate, which really made this a good fit for us. He's a certified instructor in many law enforcement subjects. So I'm not going to read the list, but you can see it is a long one. He joined the ALICE Training Institute in May of 2015 as a national trainer, and in 2017 was promoted to Assistant Director of Training with the ALICE Training Institute. So with that, I'm going to turn the night over to Brandon Roan. Thank you.
All these tall guys up here, I gotta, let's just do this. Thank you guys. It's, whoa, where'd everybody go? Was it something I said? Thank you guys. Thank you to the school board, to the administration, superintendent, and thank you to the community for coming. I got to tell you, I travel all across this country doing ALICE training, and I can assure you folks in the Council Rock community that your school district is doing it right. So you should be very proud. You should brag about the Council Rock School District and the things that they're doing to ensure the safety of your students. When I here, I will be making a beeline up the Northeast Extension because I have 2 of these to do tomorrow up in the Pocono area. So again, you should be very proud of what they're doing. I'm going to talk to you very briefly about ALICE and kind of give you an overview of what the administration endured for 2 days through ALICE training. And I want to start off with, I want you all to think about what you were trained to do in a man-made or natural disaster. And to that point, when you think about all those events, whether it be a fire, a hurricane, a tornado, a bomb threat, an active shooter event, and I'll refer to them as violent critical incidents. But that's the only event where for a very, very long period of time, we have told people to stay in the dangerous area, right? If the building was on fire, we got out. If there was a hurricane or a tornado, we would seek shelter. Yet for a individual walking around a school with a firearm, we told people to find a corner or get under a desk and stay there and wait for help to come. And this whole program started Christmas Eve of 2000. Greg and Lisa Crane, who are the founders of the Alice Training Institute. Greg was a police officer in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for 20 plus years, a SWAT team commander, a team leader, a operator, and his wife Lisa was a elementary school principal. And on December 24th of 2000, you may remember there were 7 inmates who escaped from a Texas prison. They were coined as the Texas 7. And they went to a sporting goods store and robbed that store. And unfortunately, Officer Aubrey Hawkins was dispatched to that call, and he was fatally shot and wounded. And Greg and Lisa had some of Greg's SWAT members over for Christmas Eve dinner and a get together. And it was at that moment that the time, with some serious thought, Greg had asked Lisa what was her plan should an armed intruder enter her building. And being from Texas, Lisa's response was quite funny, actually. She said, well, Greg, that's a dumb question. I'm going to go to the office, call a code red. We're going to lock the building down and wait for you. And it was at that moment that Greg realized, yeah, that's not going to work. It didn't work in 1998 in Jonesboro, Arkansas, Westside Middle School. It didn't work in April of 1999 at Columbine High School. It didn't work in 1998 at Thurston High School. And so for the first time, Greg began to question, well, there's got to be something better. And he went and researched to try to find a more proactive response. And unfortunately, there was none. And so the Alice Training Institute program was born out of simple tactics that my law enforcement brothers and sisters here, we use on a daily basis. And before I move any further, I do want to say thank you guys for the work that you are continuing to do out there on the road. I'd be lying to you if I told you I missed it. But thank you for the work you're doing and the partnership that you have with the school district. So I'm going to move through this somewhat with a little bit of pace to it, but there will be plenty of time for questions regarding Alice particularly. And so how should organizations train their personnel for a violent critical incident? I will tell you, parents, again, you are in good hands at the Council Rock School District because your administrators and your staff are trained and ready to go. Alice is not a theory. It's not an idea that Greg wrote down on a bar napkin one night. You will find very quickly that this comes down to science. Two simple concepts: math and science. It's research and history and experience. Some would argue that Alice is a theory, and a theory is a theory until it's tested. And once it's tested, it's no longer a theory. And I am proud to say that Alice has been tested over at 17 different violent critical incidents, with the majority of them being schools. And to date, we have 0 fatalities in an Alice trained facility of the 17 that have come under attack. So we are proud about that number. But the fact of the matter is, nobody works harder to put Alice Training out of business than the Alice Training National Trainers. Because if we can prevent these things from happening, then there's no need for us. And quite frankly, I'll find something else to do. So there's a lot of theories out there that, well, it takes a lot of time to hurt a lot of people. And that's 100% false. It does not take a lot of time to hurt a lot of people, and I'll prove that to you here. Some of the facts that you need to understand about these events, these violent critical incidents, is that a single shot is fired in one of these events every 4 to 15 seconds. Our bad guy is hitting at a 50 to 70% hit rate with a killed to wounded ratio of 1-to-1. And let that sink in for a minute, because when we do some of the math here, you'll understand why this is so important. These numbers and these stats are really important. If you look at the next couple slides I'm going to show, you look at the amount of deceased and injured people in the duration of these events. This is Sandy Hook Elementary School, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time getting to specifics or details about these, because I will go way over my allotted time, and I probably will do that anyway. So I will keep it moving. Before I do, let me do this. If anybody has questions outside of the Q&A, before I forget, so it's Brandon Rohn, R-H-O-N-E. My email is brohn@alicetraining.com. And my cell phone number is 267-304-4678. Now, people may say, well, you just give out your phone number. Well, there are thousands of people across this country that have my phone number. So you should not be left in the dark. The only request I have is that you don't put it on a bathroom stall. I greatly appreciate that. So, but you look at Sandy Hook, you look at the 26 lives that were lost that day, and the killing time, or the duration of that event, is 5 minutes. And so we would think in a normal 5-minute period of time, 5 minutes is not long. And so it was not long for these either. You look at this, the name of individuals who lost their lives that day, that number next to their name is not the amount of times they were shot or shot at. That is their age. That is the age of the students and the personnel that were killed and wounded in this event. And so this event did not last that long. And there are some heroes even among that list. If you look at that bottom left, Jesse Lewis, 6-year-old Jesse Lewis. I can get into all kinds of details about this event, but one of the things I will share with you is Jesse Lewis was not formally trained in any proactive response measure training. To the best of our knowledge, we can surmise that Jesse had a conversation at home with mom and dad about guns and gun safety. And when the shooting stopped at classroom number 8, and we cannot confirm or deny whether it was a malfunction of the weapon or during a magazine change. But what we can confirm is that Jesse Lewis yelled, "Gun, run." And 9 other kids in that classroom ran right past the shooter out that classroom door, out of the school to a local firehouse. And so even though Jesse lost his life, unfortunately, in that event, if Jesse does not yell those 2 simple words, I am confident in saying that we are probably adding 9 more names to that list. And that's important, and I'll come back to why that's important. Chardon High School in February of 2012, you look at the duration of this event was actually 47 seconds. 3 students were killed, 3 students were wounded when a student stood up in a cafeteria where Coach Frank Hall was on cafeteria duty and displayed a firearm and began shooting. Coach Hall stood up, flipped his table over, and began charging after that individual. That individual then ran out of that cafeteria down the hall where he shot his last suspect, victim, Nick Wassler, as he was coming down the hall. Coach Hall took fire, ducked behind a Pepsi machine. The Pepsi machine took that round. And on the shooter's way out of the school, he took 1 shot at Nick Wassler, who was walking down a hall. Nick survived, but unfortunately, he is paralyzed for life. But again, you look at the duration of this event, total of 47 seconds, and you look at the number of killed or wounded during this event. So the police will get here in time. And I will tell you, with my law enforcement brothers and sisters in the room, there is no delay in effort when that call comes out. But the fact of the matter is, throughout the course of the majority of these events, they are simply just not there at that moment. I can count on one hand, and I probably can recite more of these active killer events than I will want to, where an actual police officer was already on scene. Obviously, the most notable one recently was Parkland. However, this is not a slight, these numbers are not a slight to your police department. It's just the facts. I will tell you, having been a police officer, been in this business for a long time, and much like the men and women here, we want to be there, and we will try to get into that parking lot on 2 wheels as fast as we possibly can, because we understand that it is a matter of time. But the reality is, number one, somebody has to tell the police there's a problem. Number two, we have to get there. There's this false belief that people just get out of the way when lights and sirens are on. Every cop in this room will tell you that that is probably not true. Most people, if anything, they just stop. And you look at the time of day when these events happen, you think about your community. What is your daytime population versus your evening population? Obviously, if this event happens during the school day, you're going to be working with your daytime population. How many more vehicles does your township or your municipality bring during the business day? That's that many more vehicles these officers have to negotiate. But the fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, that's not true. They're going to get there, but are they going to get there, A, in time to completely stop it or mitigate it? And they're going to try, and they're going to do everything they absolutely can. And every cop within earshot of that call coming out is coming, which is why you heard from the DA that, you know, you parents, you have a role to play, but at the time, you need to let the law enforcement and the first responders do their job. Bringing more people to the scene doesn't help them. So we need to let them get here and do their job. We know through research that the average duration of this event is 5 to 6 minutes. We also know that 60% of the time this event is over before law enforcement shows up. I'll show you a statistic here in a little bit that talks about how we get to that number, but we need to understand what these numbers are really trying to tell us. So the first question I'm going to ask is, we have to tell the police there's a problem, right? Somebody needs to tell them. If it's not in a building with an SRO, somebody needs to tell us there's a problem. So this is where I ask for audience participation. How long do you think it's going to take you to dial 911 if shots were to ring out in the building? Somebody said a minute. Somebody said 2 minutes. Anybody else? 3 minutes? Anybody think it's faster? Who thinks it's faster? How long, ma'am? 30 seconds. Ideally, we would think that, right? Well, I will tell you the average is 2 minutes. 2 minutes before somebody picks up the phone and dial 911 to tell them there's a problem. So now you've got the phone picked up. It took you 2 minutes to do that. How many people have ever called 911 before? Sometimes it's almost like getting a second mortgage, isn't it? There's a lot of questions you have to answer. I can tell you that there are efforts across the country, particularly for this type of violent critical incident, where we are no longer training dispatchers to ask all the questions that don't really matter, right? If there's a violent critical incident, there are only 2 pieces of information that we need to know immediately: what and where, right? Your date of birth, your home address, that doesn't really matter at that point in time, but there's still a portion of the country that we're having that time delay in gathering information. And maybe one of the police officers or the DA or somebody can, I don't know what's happening here in Bucks, and how the Department of Emergency Services is training call takers and dispatchers, but that could be a question that you ask some of the law enforcement here. But there's also some time to gather that information. Are you yelling and screaming into the phone in total panic? Are you trying to whisper so that the active shooter, active killer does not hear you? And now that call taker has to say, can you speak up or calm down, stop yelling, I can't understand you, all those kind of things. So we've given that a minute. So now we got to get an officer response. We've given that 2 minutes. So now we're at a total arrival time in 5 minutes. So let me ask you a question, ladies and gentlemen. If you dial 911 and 5 minutes later, a cop showed up at your door, would you think that's an awesome response time? I will tell you, as a police captain, I have bragged about cops showing up to a call in 5 minutes. But they've got here in 5 minutes. What you've heard from Bill and Doug, which is phenomenal, is this time kind of you're probably down to within a couple seconds, because they don't have to force entry or find out how they're going to get in. They're going to walk up to a door, key their way in, and make their way down a hallway. I will tell you, it's ironic to me, and I say this all the time. When I was in school, I hated school. Then I found my way as a school resource officer. Now I do a lot of trainings in schools, and then I was pretty crazy enough to get on a school board. So thank you guys. I sit in the same seat you do. But what I told a local superintendent was, I asked for key fobs just like you guys have, and there are a lot of schools across the country that the law enforcement doesn't have that access. And I asked my superintendent for key fobs, and we were denied. And so I told her, I said, well, I just need you to understand, I've already given our officers permission to drive their car through the first door they pull up on. Because Detroit Police Department did a phenomenal study, which I wish I was able to do, but the Detroit Police Department was able to ascertain that a late 90s to mid 2000s Ford Crown Vic Police Interceptor can not only make entry into their high schools, but it can make complete left and right hand turns down the hallway. After I told the superintendent that story, we got key fobs. She told me I couldn't tell my officers to drive through the door. I said, ma'am, you don't understand. I've given officers permission to tear stuff up. I can't take it back. But your officers making entry here are probably going to be less than that, because they have key fobs and they're able to do that. The other thing you have to take into consideration is, and I've only been in this building, but this building is pretty large. You think about what's the size of the high school and where is the active killer in relationship to where the officer makes entry, and how long is it going to take that officer to run from one side of the building to the other, or from one floor to the other. And so when you add all these numbers up, we've had another 2 minutes, which is going to give us a total of 7 minutes. Now, remember, I told you 2 slides ago that a single shot is fired every 4 to 15 seconds during one of these events. So let's do the math. It's very basic math. That's why I'm able to do it. Let's look at the high end of that 4 to 15. So let's take the 15-second mark. There are 60 seconds in a minute, correct? Okay, that means 2 of us can do good math. Appreciate you, sir. And so if you take that, how many times does 60 go into 15? Thank you, appreciate you. I'll just talk to you all night. So if you look at that, you're talking about 4 casualties every minute. We are now getting to a contact time of 7 minutes. So let's do the math. 4 times 7 is, oh, now see, they're picking up, right? 28. Of those 28, we know that our killed to wounded ratio is 1 to 1. So how many of those 28 students are now deceased? Takes a lot of time to hurt a lot of people, doesn't it? No, it sure doesn't. So the question becomes, who really is the first responder? And I will submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that is the folks that are already there. Law enforcement's coming, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. But here's the facts. If law enforcement is already 2 minutes too late to the party because they're not notified until 2 minutes into this event, we're already at 8 casualties, 4 of them being deceased. See, it's very simple, ladies and gentlemen. This comes down to basic math and science. This is nothing of a doctoral level. This is nothing of mind-blowing epiphanies. I can tell you if it was, I would not be the guy training it. This is very simple. Alice comes down to a very simple approach. You have two jobs. Remove yourself from the dangerous location or render that location no longer dangerous. It's just that simple. When we look at proactive versus passive, this is a layout from Virginia Tech on the second floor. Again, I'm not going to get into specifics and details of this event, but let's just look at the numbers of outcomes from those who did something proactive to the rooms that were passive. And so if you look at classroom 204 and 205, Professor Lebrowski, anybody know his name? One person. You see, we need to cultivate more of those heroes because Professor Lebrowski was a hero. Professor Lebrowski, a Holocaust survivor, immediately recognized the sights and sounds of violence and went into a response. That response was very simple: to try to barricade the door and tell those students to jump out of a second floor window. You look at that 14 number in the green, those are the number of people that made it out of that room uninjured whatsoever. 3 people sustained injuries, 2 from a fall, and 2 people were deceased, Professor Lebrowski and another student who used their body against the door to keep the gunman out when he started firing through the door. You look at classroom 205, a complete barricade of that classroom. None killed, none wounded. 2 proactive responses, 2 different proactive responses in the same area, and look at the survival rate. Look at the survival rate in classroom 206, 207, and 211. Those numbers are reversed. You have double-digit fatalities, single-digit survivability. Your students are going to be trained by these instructors that increasing their odds of survival is the goal. Just that simple. That's the job. We have to understand that we have to do something about this event to try to increase our odds of survival. Otherwise, we go sit in the corner and wait for our help to come. That doesn't work out too well. And we can prove to you that doesn't work out too well because this is a schematic drawing to scale that was used in the Columbine High School shooting investigation. I will submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that for over 4 minutes and 10 seconds, 52 kids and 4 adults sat in that library waiting to be executed before the first shot was ever fired in that room in a traditional lockdown. Now, I've been around schools a long time, both as a police officer and as a national trainer. I know most high schools in this country can evacuate an entire building of a couple thousand students in under 4 minutes. Yet 52 kids, 4 adults sat in that library in a traditional lockdown for over 4 minutes before the first shot was ever fired. Ladies and gentlemen, you can look at me, you can tell I'm no track star. I have a little bit of athletic capability, but I can guarantee you this. You give me a 4 minute and 10 second head start in a race, I will beat Usain Bolt. Ladies and gentlemen, this comes down to basic math. A single shot was not even fired in that room for the first 4 minutes and 10 seconds that they sat and waited. 13 people lost their lives that day on April 20th, 1999. 10 of them lost their lives in that library waiting to be executed. I submit to you today, if Columbine High School subscribed to a proactive response training, those 10 students would have been out of that room. Because as you can see, it's very simple. What was available to them? An exit, a way out. That same way out that most of you, I'm sure, remember seeing the news footage of students walking out of a side exit along a fence line into a grass area, escorted by SWAT team members with their hands up. That's the same exit out of the library that those students could have taken 4 minutes and 10 seconds earlier before the gunfire started in that library. We don't blame Patty Nielsen. We don't blame any of those teachers in that school because, quite frankly, I will tell you that based on the research that I have done, those teachers did exactly what they were trained to do. It's not their fault. They did exactly what they were trained to do in a traditional lockdown. The problem was the response, the training. It wasn't the implementation. The training was the problem. So, Alice is based off simple information. We authorize you, empower you to do something about your survivability. That's what your students are going to be taught. That's what this staff has been trained to make decisions based off some information that you have. And those decisions can be very different for every single person in the building, because it's all going to be based on where and what is happening. And I can't stand up here and give you a formula. I told the instructors that in class. I can't give you a formula, because if I can give you a formula, then I would tell you, I would bring out my crystal ball, I would shake it 3 times and tell you that on April 10th at 9 a.m. during class change, there's going to be an active shooter event that's going to take place at the gym at Council Rock Middle School. Well, if I could tell you that, what would you do about it? Wouldn't be here. Just that simple. So there's no formula. We have to make decisions based on some information. This administration has empowered the staff to make decisions that increase the survival of not only themselves, but for your son and daughter. That's what they've been trained to do. That's what the staff has been told to do. Make a decision that's going to keep people alive. Point blank, period. Because I can guarantee you this, as a father of 2, there's not a day that I wake up, I sit down and have breakfast with my kids as they throw Cheerios and Pop-Tarts at each other across the table and say, well, you know what? Today is a good day for Skylar or Elias to die. I've never had that conversation. But I do know that there is a real reality that for 99% of the time I send them to school, they are going to be safe. It's that 1% that I worry about. What if somebody decides today is the day? And so what do? We train them. We prepare them. We give them tools to make decisions. We empower them to take stake in their own survivability. Alice is a proactive approach. It gives you additional options beyond that traditional lockdown. I'll get into the acronym here in a little bit. We tell everybody, you cannot assume that your event is just going to be like the event that was on TV the day or the week or the month of the year before, because we don't know that. Although Alice is an acronym and it spells a name, it is non-sequential. You pick which one of those responses you want, which one makes the most sense based on the information you know and where you are at that time. Again, increase odds of survival. That's the name of the game. Increase odds of survival. And again, it's research-based. It's research-based. It is math and science. 2 concepts you can't argue. We did the math. I'll get into the science here shortly. So the A in Alice is for the alert. That is for the people that are already in the space that is occupied at the moment in which the violence starts. Right? Somebody stands up, they yell, they present a firearm, or they stand up and just start shooting. That's an alert to tell them that something is happening. Right from that alert, they have to start making decisions. I can get into the whole science, and I got into it in the training and talked about how your brain will function and what you will do and what parts of your brain will and will not function in that time of stress-induced environment. I'll save that for another time or questions because that'll take me too long. But we have to identify and recognize that alert immediately. Research shows me that oftentimes, too many times, people take that alert and try to rationalize it because we're not used to being around that level of violence. You will read statements or quotes or hear articles or interviews, and people will say, well, I thought it was roofers. I thought it was chairs slamming on the ground. Patty Nielsen, when she dials 911, she tells the call taker, I went out in the hallway to tell them no, I thought they were making a production. She's rationalizing the violence. Teachers at Sandy Hook Elementary School heard the gunshots and said, well, we just thought it was the roofers on the roof dropping things. Why? Because we rationalize violence, because if we're not exposed to it, we don't identify it immediately. We have to identify that alert immediately and respond. The L in Alice is for lockdown. It goes beyond that traditional lockdown. Your instructors, your administrators have been taught how to fortify, barricade doors, not simply just lock it and turn out the lights and go hide in the corner. We've seen how that has not worked. We know that most of the time, our active killers, when met with resistance at a door, they will move on. We've also seen in times where they have put rounds through the door to try to get access to the door. So we have to fortify that space. We have to barricade that space. We want to drastically delay or completely deny them entry into that classroom if we cannot get out. The I in Alice is for inform. Those who are in the alert, that is right where the violence has started, somehow have to get information to everybody else so that the inform piece can happen. So if the shooting starts or the violence starts in the science wing, we got to get information either through the classroom phone or through the office to make an all call to tell everybody else in the building where the violence is in that room, in the building. So now those folks can start making some decisions that's going to increase their survivability. The C in Alice is for counter. That is oftentimes misconstrued to be fighting. We do not teach people to fight somebody with a gun. That is silly. You're not going to win a fight, a fist fight, with a gentleman with a gun. And I use the word gentleman, A, because this is, we have to maintain a professional environment, but I will not, and I never has, as long as I've been training Alice, use the name of these active killers, because I do not believe that they deserve another 1/10 of a second of recognition for the mass murders they have committed. But counter is the science, and what your administrators and teachers have been taught, that it's about affecting the active killer's brain. And as long as I can affect his brain, the 5.5 pounds of pressure it takes to put on that trigger, to squeeze that trigger, if I can cause multiple OODA loop interruptions, overloading that brain with stimulus, I know and I can prove to you that even though as many of you think you may be able to multitask, I can prove to you very simply, you cannot multitask. Your brain can only attend to one thing at a time. If I can occupy that brain, cause you multiple OODA loop interruptions, overload your brain with stimulus, your brain cannot focus on squeezing that trigger and focus on what I'm doing to you. And I can counter you by many ways. One of the things that I always find fascinating when people try to confuse counter with fighting is, if I'm going to fight somebody with a gun, what must I do? I got to get close to you. I can't fight you if the gentleman standing in the back by the sound booth is the gentleman with the gun. How am I fighting him from the stage? The only way for me to fight him is I have to close this distance, come from here to him to try to punch him. With every step I take closer getting to him, I'm giving him a bigger target. This target is big enough. I don't need to make it any bigger for him. But what can I do? From this position, I can move. I can put more distance between him and I. I can throw things. As long as I can impact his 120 degrees field of vision, I know I can. That's the second fastest way to occupy his brain. The only other fastest way through the 5 major senses to occupy one's brain is through smell. And I'm not baking a brownie and walking in and putting it under his nose. So from this distance, what can I do? Again, I can throw things. I can move. I can make distance. I can cause OODA loop interruptions. OODA loop, Colonel Boyd, if anybody's familiar with him, you understand what the OODA loop is. OODA loop stands for observe, orient, decide, act. It is the process by which every single one of us makes decisions every single day based off either an auditory or visual stimulus that we are taking in. You run that cycle thousands of times a day. Thousands of times a day. If you don't really know what the OODA loop is, I challenge you to Google Colonel Boyd and the OODA loop. I don't have enough time to get into the details of it. but understanding that when we talk about this counter strategy, we are affecting the individual's brain and his ability to try to shoot accurately. And I know if I cannot make him shoot accurately, I stand a better chance of survival. Moving on to the E in ALICE, that's for the evacuate. Remember, I told you ALICE comes down to two very basic principles. Remove yourself from the dangerous location, evacuate, render the location no longer dangerous, counter. It's very simple. We know counter strategies work because it works. We look at the statistics and the percentage of hit ratios of officer-involved shootings across this country, and we look at the hit percentage ratio of active shooter events, and we know that law enforcement only hits at about a 28 to 32%. Those numbers are very poor. Many reasons why, but the biggest thing that we take away from this is because A, we know that if we can cause multiple OODA loop interruptions, the major difference between those numbers for law enforcement across the country and for active shooter events is simple: dynamics. If I can cause enough dynamics, I impact accuracy. Very simple. So please don't be confused when your students come home and when you start talking about ALICE and they say, well, we did this or we did that. At no time has any instructor in the Council Rock School District been told that they are to fight an armed gunman. At no time has that happened. So I want to show you this video. You look at, well, see many Secret Service None. I can confirm for you today, through my friend, former director of the United States Secret Service, Joe Clancy, and I have worked with and have many friends who have been and are currently on presidential details with the United States Secret Service, and they have never fired a round in a assassination or assassination attempt. Why did I show you that video? Because who stopped that shooting and assassination attempt of President Reagan? Did anybody catch it? Yes, ma'am. Close, but not it. It was the microphone boom operator. Remember I told you pay attention to the right side of the screen, the guy that had the greenish yellow cardigan sweater on? He's a reporter boom operator. He swarmed the gunman before law enforcement even swarmed him. So when we look at and understand these events, the numbers don't lie to us. Over 80% of these events do not end until an aggressive action is taken. The question becomes is who is doing the aggressive action? And you look up that 80%, the majority of it is by applied force and the other is by suicide. We know for a very long time, most of the time, these individuals do not want to play with the police. They want to come in, they're against the clock. They want to kill as many people as they possibly can before that first officer shows up. Their goal is very simple. Come into school, shoot and kill as many people as possibly can before the cop gets here. Just that simple. So we got to be the ones to do something about it. Again, we looked at the times, we agreed that we're the true first responders. Again, this is not a knock against law enforcement. I've been on that side. I understand it. I've been in that car when that call has come out for shots fired at a school. But the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, far too many times we are just not going to get there fast enough. When we talk about training, how are your students going to be trained? They'll be trained, as you heard, they'll be trained in several different layers. And they're not throwing them all to this at one time. I did give the instructors this information, but I will share it with you. If you're not familiar with Julia Cook is a children's author. She wrote a bunch of books post Sandy Hook. Lisa Crane and Julia got together and wrote this children's book called I'm Not Scared, I'm Prepared, because I know all about Alice. We use this book to train that K through 5 age bracket, right? The idea behind Alice training is not about traumatizing students. We need to train at appropriate levels. And levels at the elementary school look different than the middle and the high school. So this is one tool that's available. Even as a parent, this is not specific to just instructors. You can buy this book off our website or Amazon. Also with the book is an activity book that helps the elementary school teachers and principals discuss and walk them through the training so that, again, it's not this traumatizing, very emotional event. Right? We train them at the level at which we expect them to operate and the level at which we know they can understand. So those are just some simple tools that are available. Also available to every certified instructor in this school district is a special considerations folder that allows them to train if a student has a disability or a special need at whatever level, right? So that training will look slightly different in how we roll it out to those students versus the other students. So they have every resource available to them to roll out the Alice training effectively. And in partnership with your first responders, there's no doubt in my mind that this will be done very, very well and professionally. I'm just going to go through some of the research and recommendations and documents. These are all documents that have come out after Alice. Alice led the country for the first 8 years of a proactive response. The tide didn't really change until Virginia Tech. And then it got a little more aggressive after Sandy Hook. But you will see every research document out there says that traditional lockdown is no longer a good enough standalone response. You have to have multiple options, proactive response approach to responding to this type of event. So this is just one of those documents from the U.S. Department of Education. This is a Safe Schools document from the entire state of Massachusetts that's specifically using and recommending Alice training. State of New Jersey, again, their Safe Schools document. Again, evacuate, counter, barricade, great terms to use. The Massachusetts, again, using, there are tons of states, Alabama, Vermont, that are all using Alice, Connecticut, that are all using Alice as their proactive response training to a violent critical incident. And so at this time, I don't know if we're opening up to questions or turning it back to you guys. Questions? All right. So if you have questions for me specific to Alice, you can come down to a microphone, get on camera, wave to the people on YouTube. Not one. So I either did a really good job or nobody wants to be that first person. Oh, there we go. There we go.
I probably don't need the mic. Thank you. That was informative. But the question I have is, what are you actually teaching our students? So who's training the students? Is it what resources are being used? Is it an hour? Is it 2 hours? Are the teachers training them? What are they literally getting?
So your students will be getting the Alice training from the Alice certified instructors. And there are 50 of them across your district. And I would imagine that 50 are X number per building. They will be getting all of these strategies. Now, how that rolls out will be more of an administrative team question. You know, at what point, how do they roll it out in sections? Are they rolling out grade levels? That I don't know. That's specific to the district. And maybe that can be a question that gets answered in the email, or I'm not sure if they're going to take that question now, but specifically to the district, again, the instruction will be coming from one of the 50 instructors that are already certified in the district. Okay.
Thanks. It's a wonderful question, and I thank you for asking it. In a general sense, our approach is twofold, without getting into all the details, because there are many, many details. And we will certainly, we've done a degree of communicating about Alice up to this point. Tonight is a really important pivotal point in this process, and you can certainly expect much, much more communication coming here in the future. So as Brandon had noted, we had 50 individuals, and that was a combination of administrators, Council Rock teachers, members of our police staffs, in this room, in this building, when the school wasn't in session, engaged in 2 full days of training. So of those 50 individuals, we have now trained folks in Alice 2 entire days from all 14 of our schools. So all of the principals were there. Many of our assistant principals at the secondary level were there. Again, we have Council Rock teachers, at least 1 teacher from each school. So in terms of how this ultimately gets introduced, presented, and then developed with your children, it'll be twofold. Part of it will be those folks from each building, from your child's school or your children's schools, who will do a degree, a layer of that training. But the other thing that's happened since those 50 individuals went through the 2-day training is that we devoted in-service time when school was closed. It was a work day for our teachers, an in-service day, a professional development day, and those 50 individuals then trained the remainder of the staff. So at this point, I'm going to say we have 98%. Don't quote me on that, but that's got to be very close. 98% of our staff is trained, and we will continue to work with staff so that all classroom teachers, guidance counselors, et cetera, are able to work with their classes, because a lot of this has to be very specific, has to be very local. The relationships are there primarily between the children and their classroom teachers. So there's a degree of this training and just learning initially that will come from that classroom teacher, all of whom have been trained at this point. The very select few who haven't will be in the coming weeks. And then the second piece, again, is that we do have these 50 individuals representing all 14 schools who are also able to do some of the more macro lessons and conversations. They're able to go into classrooms and have classroom-based conversations. So it's really a combination of those 2 groups of our professional staff members who will be delivering the training. We need more questions. Come on down.
Good evening.
Hi, thank you for this. Very informative. 2 questions, actually. One is just pretty simply, how can we best help our kids if they have questions as this is being rolled out? And then my second question is around kind of the sustainment of this moving forward as there's staff turnover, new students coming into the school next year, the year after that. How are we implementing this down the road?
All right, so I'll answer the specifics to the first question, which now I don't remember what it was. What was the first part of the question?
How do we help our kids?
How do you help your kids? Yes. So what I always tell people, and I do this with my own kids, you got to have that conversation at home. And, you know, depending on the age of your child, it will depend on how you structure the language in that conversation. I will tell you, prior to the book, I had the conversation with my 5-year-old the way cops talk, right? I was very matter of fact. You know, I said, Skylar, listen, honey, I need you to pay attention. One day a bad guy's going to try to come to your school. He's going to try to shoot you, your friends, and your teacher. This is what I need you to do. Was that the best approach? I thought I did a really good job until the conversation surfaced with my wife at the kitchen table, and she looks at me and goes, really? So now the book, if you have that elementary school student, the book really structures the language, and it takes the guessing game about what do I say, what don't I say, what's too much, what's not enough. Because here's what I've learned. I've come to learn that the children are not afraid of the conversation as much as we, the adults, are. And so we have to have that conversation. Again, it needs to be age appropriate depending on the age of your child. As far as the turnover and structure building, that would be a question more for the admin, but I would assume that they have a plan for new teachers and getting them trained. Alice offers ways to train them, and they're aware of that. But what that actually looks like in practicality for the district, I'm not going to answer that question for them. That's an admin question. Yes, ma'am.
She actually asked the question I was going to ask, but I also was wondering when you were talking about the counter, you kind of kept using a term that I didn't catch or whatever.
OODA loop?
Yeah.
OODA loop stands for observe, orient, decide, act. Again, that's a process in which you make decisions, I make decisions every single day. It's the scientific term that Colonel John Boyd, retired Colonel John Boyd from the Air Force, came up with, and that was a way for the U.S. Air Force to better put itself in a tactical position to be better at winning the air fight. And so, again, I mean, I can spend 2.5 hours talking about the OODA loop. But if you just Google Colonel John Boyd in the OODA loop, there's a tremendous amount of information out there.
Okay, thank you. And thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you. We can flip a coin.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening. I think this is more of a comment than a question. I work in a school district where we have been ALICE training, and I've been doing ALICE training with students. And I'm understanding that the ALICE training for the students is really just talking about ALICE training, but not physically ALICE training, doing an enhanced lockdown or anything like that. Is that correct?
So again, that's going to be a decision made at the district
Dr.
level.
Fraser answered it, but I just want to make sure that I understand that it sounds more conversation-based than physical-based.
Yeah, certainly between now and the end of the school year, there will be no enhanced lockdown drills.
But do you anticipate moving forward?
In the future, yes. Now, we're very well aware that there's a range of what those drills look like in other districts. Ours will be, I think, more on the more subtle side than aggressive side, but we don't even want to rush into any of those simulations or, which the drills obviously simulate. Something that if our children are prepared for can be harmful, can be traumatic for them. So our plan initially, and by initially, I'll define that right now as from now through the end of this school year. So now through the 3rd week of June, conversations only. Just lessons,
Right.
Educating students, talking about some of the concepts, talking about some of the principles. There will be no drills, no enhanced lockdowns or anything like that. There will be as this process develops, as it unfolds, but the earliest that would happen is next school year.
Thank you. I just
You're welcome.
wanted to say from my own perspective, from being trained and then training with students, we talk about ALICE as, it's supposed to be, you're supposed to feel empowered. And a lot of times I found that students had a lot of questions, but then once they even for myself, I was like, I don't know how to do this. I can't do this. I've never done anything. And then to physically just practice really increased the confidence of the staff. And then just doing drills with students, I think also increases their confidence and takes away some of that questioning of, can I really do this? What is this going to look like? I found that was very helpful just in my own school district. So thank you.
And I think we can echo that because even the 50 folks who went through the training here as the core trainers, the 2 full days with Brent, they said the same thing. It wasn't until they got into those simulations that the aha moments really hit and it became powerful and the level of buy-in and commitment was there. And so we needed to get to that point. With children, especially our youngins, we just don't want to get there too fast.
Right. Thank you.
That's all. You're welcome.
My question's more also on the same thing. I experienced this at the college level where I've seen it as a college professor. It's very different when it's adults sitting in your class. So I empathize with teachers dealing with children in this, but I wanted to know, are you guys going to roll out before the discussions start at our kids at the elementary level, like a preemptive paperwork for the parents for kids who are very anxious or would have a very poor reaction in the school setting, so that we're prepared to prepare them a little extra so it's not just thrown on them?
Yeah, I think we can do that. I don't know that that was necessarily part of our planning up until this point. Frank, with you, I wanted to see what our attendance was like tonight. I want to see what that email inbox looks like. You will hear from your child's principal, certainly all parents will, both before those first conversations take place and after.
Okay.
And
'Cause I
you're
know
accustomed to that at your school anyway.
Right, and currently lockdown drills we're told after.
Mhm.
And I know when my son, who does have anxiety, his first grade year, had I been able to prep him that these happen at your school,
Absolutely.
we would have had a better reaction. So that's basically just my input, was if we could get some early warning,
Yes.
because we
Yes.
support it. We just want to help.
We agree 100%. We've talked about it as a cabinet team. We've talked about it with our district leadership team, our principals, et cetera. And we are in lockstep with that. Communication before, allow the activities to take place, and then a summary communication at the end. And hopefully people who, can't be here tonight because of other commitments or whatever, watch this video later so that they understand what it is, because nothing will be more powerful than those conversations between moms and dads and
Thank you.
their children. You're welcome.
I just want to say, I don't know if lucky or fortunate is the appropriate term, but, I have said to this administrative team at the end of our 2-day training, very fortunate that I live in your backyard. And so, just so you know, I have made myself available to your district for questions at any stage down the road, as a crawl, walk, run through this process. And it is a crawl, walk, run through the process. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, so I'm not sure if my question is directly relevant to Alice. It's more so about just the lockdowns in general and our drills in the school.
Okay.
So it might be for Dr. Frazier, but
Okay.
so my question is, are there going to be any changes made to the sort of drills that we do this year? Because I know you sort of answered that question, but as like a comment, sort of, I've personally felt that the drills that we do in high school, like lockdown drills, are a lot less thorough than the ones that we did in elementary school. Like I know that if there were a situation where we were to go into like a lockdown, I wouldn't know what to expect to hear to signify the start of the lockdown or the end of the lockdown. Whereas in elementary school, we had a very specific, like we had something that started the lockdown and something very specific to end it, so that if someone were like held against their will to end it, that we would know it's not that. So I know that I feel like my current one is a lot less thorough, and I'm wondering if any changes will be made to like that, to the drills that we do.
Well, thank you. I think that is awesome feedback, really valuable feedback. You just said something that I hadn't known or realized or stumbled across before this evening, and that's exactly why we do this. And that kind of information is critically important to us. And I promise you, I'll do some level of action on that tomorrow. To answer your question, are we going to change the nature of the drills between now and the end of the school year? The answer is no. Now, if we can do a better job with the existing lockdown drills that we're doing, that's a different story.
Well,
But even at the secondary level, what we want to have happen between now and the end of the school year is have those conversations take place so that folks understand what Alice is, what all 5 letters stand for, what the options are, how decisions will get made, how information will get communicated. But again, not looking to run into those drills, that crawl, walk, run approach.
yeah, so just as an example, if you're interested in what I'm talking about, especially with my elementary school for Newtown Elementary, we knew that when a lockdown ended, they had to say, Newtown Nights, this lockdown is over. And so that if someone was forced to say like this lockdown is over, that we would know to stay still. And I just definitely think that if those changes could be made, not in the nature of the drill, but just in being aware of when something's starting and ending. Oh, and also as in addition to a comment that someone else made before, is that I definitely feel like as a high schooler, I know that we won't be starting any like active drills practicing Alice until not this year. I definitely think that those will be more effective for high school students, because I know that as a high school student, it's not as effective just to listen to something, especially in like a form of an assembly or when all of us are maybe not paying as close attention as we need to for something as important as this. So
Agree. Thank you so much.
Love it when students get involved.
Good evening.
Good
Thank you for
evening.
this forum. Council Rock has a large number of students with disabilities, and they do an excellent job educating these students. I'm wondering, how does the ALICE program adapt to this population? Is there any type of additional training that will need to be provided? And just recently reading some literature with regards to hearing impaired, visually impaired individuals. Is there something, are we looking at something incorporating into an IEP plan of action for these individual students?
So, two-part question. The first part of your question, yes, there is additional, and I think I may mention, but if I didn't, please forgive me if I did not. There is additional resources specific to training. It doesn't necessarily have to be students, it could be anybody with any particular disability that every one of those 50 certified instructors has available to them. So whether it be sensory, whether it be emotional, whether it be physical, whatever it is, there is additional training resources on how to train for that specific disability that is in their portal that's available to them. So to answer the first part of the question, yes, there are specifics, again, right down to the diagnosis, not just a general overview. It's very high level, right down to the specific diagnosis. The second part of the question, as I think I understand it, are there other things that can be used for the various disabilities, vision, hearing, all those kind of things? Those are all what we would call physical things that, you know, obviously would have to go through the process of either bidding or scoping out pricing, whatever the case may be. There is a vast majority of all kinds of systems and things that organizations can put into place. You know, much like your fire alarm system, you know, there's an audio and a visual component to that. There are all kinds of systems out there for VCIs, for violent critical incidents, for active shooters. So to answer your question, are there things out there? Yes. Again, that will Council Rock go out and purchase those things? I'm not going to speak for them on that. But to your point, there are things available.
I'd also like to say how impressed I am. I work very closely with a lot of the police in the community, how they are becoming trained to address this population with disabilities. So it's an awakening, so to speak, but a very positive.
Absolutely. I've always told my rookies, if you stop learning, it's time to retire. So kudos to the men and women out there doing a very difficult job, because it's not easy. It's not easy. Any other questions, comments, concerns, moans, groans, complaints? No? All right, guys, I'll turn it over to you.
How about a hand for Brandon Roan? Again, thank you all for coming. It means a tremendous amount to us. You know, you listen to Brandon talk, you hear the stories about certain places where these awful acts have taken place. Just yesterday, I had the opportunity to listen to the former, now retired superintendent of Newtown, Connecticut, where Sandy Hook is located. And he literally, not all that different from what Brandon did, but he went through it minute by minute by minute, classroom by classroom, and just educated me, educated the room on lessons learned, and emphasized the most salient practical points, but also just the emotional piece around this. So this is powerful stuff. It's scary stuff. And it is the most important work that we can possibly do as a school district and as a school community. I'm a dad too. So when I listen to Brandon talk, when I listened yesterday to that Newtown, Connecticut retired superintendent talk, I think as much about my own 16-year-old junior and her school experience as I do our own 10,885 council rockers. Know that there is nothing that we do that we take more seriously. There's nothing that we lose sleep over more than this, and that's just the way that it should be. We have engaged in a lot of planning. A lot of it is preventative in nature. A lot of it is also reactionary in nature. We want to be the best that we can be in every regard as a school district, and first and foremost comes student safety. The training that we've done now, like I said, we've trained about 98% or so of our staff members. I cannot commend our staff members enough. Our mathematician whiz and Ronald Reagan whiz down here is one of them. Mr. Tom Range, everyone. But it's fantastic. I look out here, I see a group of elementary principals back there. I see an assistant principal back there. I see Mr. Andy Sanko back there, who's going to become our director of K-12 education on July 1st and really be the one in a general sense who's overseeing our day-to-day school operations. And I will tell you that I unequivocally said to all these folks, don't come. That you're out so many nights, don't come, and here they are. And we have teachers in the audience who, some are both teachers and parents in our system. So the care is there, the concern is there. We really want to hear from you. Again, the email address is up there. I checked my phone about a half hour ago. I didn't see any in there yet. So either y'all aren't sending any yet, or it's not working. I do hope it's working. We tested it out earlier today. To our police who are here this evening, to our fire personnel who are here this evening, they deserve a tremendous round of applause, not just for what they do for the Council Rock School District, but for what they do in our entire community. Thank you all. Sincerely, thank you all. And I'll close with a little bit of a plug / information. We are in the process as a school district of developing our new strategic plan. Our strategic plan is shaping up to have 3 core components to it. One of which is academic in nature and sort of redefining student success, and varied components of that. Another piece that's going to actually be even more front and center, as Dr. Lambert spoke to mental health here this evening, is going to be all about this idea of student wellness. Yeah, I've said it before and I'll say it here again. This is a tough time to grow up. It just is. I don't know that I would want to grow up today. Just with all the social media, with all the shaming and just some of those pressures that are just so different than I know when I was a child. It's hard. And to see our students, too many of our students deal with stress, anxiety, depression, and on, is something that as a school community coming together, we have to be very mindful of, and not just recognize the issue, but address the issue, effectively address the issue. And we don't wait until they're in high school when issues become very pronounced, very profound. That's a process that we start certainly in our elementary schools, and we continue that through the K-12 continuum. And then the third piece of our strategic plan is this. So yes, we have the plans in place. You've heard a good bit about those plans here this evening. But as we said at the beginning, if there's any one document or body of work that lives and breathes and constantly evolves, it's our school safety and security plan. So that's actually going to become leg number 3 of our upcoming strategic plan, because we want to be the best that we can be, because literally lives depend on it. We know that, we get that, we pledge to do the best that we can, and I would just suggest once again that your help by asking questions, by communicating concerns, just by sharing your thoughts. It's helpful to us. It's value added to us. You know, when we hear from a student that we don't hear from students enough, you know, that's a perspective that we need to hear. Same thing with moms and dads and other folks that have the knowledge that you do and the expertise that you do. So partner with us, please. And together, I am certain that we are going to keep becoming better and better, and as a result, safer and safer. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. Mr. Rohn, thank you. Be safe driving home.